Unfortunately, no one can be told what the Matrix is. You have to see it for yourself. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more. Knowledge of self.
Radio.
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 Peace. Welcome to the Knowledge of Self Radio Show. My name is Teray Allah. I got my brothers with me.
Peace, Jakil Najala.
Peace, Jarulullah.
We'd like to welcome you again to another broadcast of the Knowledge of Self Radio Show. Today we'll be talking about the exploitation of black athletes in a variety of sports and some of the pitfalls to teaching our young people to pursue becoming professional athletes as opposed to becoming scholars. So I know that was one of the things that we were building about early on, about how these two things are a conflict in our communities. So before we begin, this show is sponsored by globalpeacesolutions.net. And for those of you who would like to get in contact with us, please contact us at www.knowledgeofselfradio.weebly.com. So let's go ahead and begin with the quote of the show. And this is a quote by a WFC fighter named Fighter X. It says, quote, "Their business practices are hardcore and cutthroat. We're paid like entertainers when we should be paid like athletes. They want us hungry. They want us to be poor. So they have more control over us." So why don't we build a little bit about that quote, man? How is it that UFC, as popular as it is showing these signs of exploitation?
Well, to me, when you look at UFC, you see that they have big names, but they don't really have like full blown stars. Like for example, compare it to like boxing, where you have like a Floyd Mayweather, where he himself is such a draw that it's almost like he transcends the sport itself a little bit. Whereas in UFC, you kind of have people on a general equal playing field as it relates to the notoriety that they get and just the publicity overall. It's more the brand of UFC is more publicized over
Than
the
the
actual
fight.
Yeah, exactly.
I could see that, yeah, for sure. Whereas you may have someone who is kind of popular, like a Tito Ortiz or Anderson Silva. I mean, that dude's not selling Gatorade or Hanes or Nikes.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so I see what you're saying. Whereas he may be able to sell some UFC attire, but the brand fought, like that guy hasn't fought in a while now.
Right.
UFC continues on. Right? They're not hurting because sales didn't go down.
Right.
I'm sure, in fact, sales have increased as far as UFC.
Right.
And that's a funny thing is that some athletes, they have somewhat become a cultural icon in American sports, such as Michael Jordan, but it's so few and far in between. I mean, honestly, I thought the Williams sisters would be the equivalent of a cultural icon in professional tennis, but since they're black, you're not going to see them as a cultural icon. So
And it's funny because it's funny you mentioned them because you can see how it wasn't until Serena started really using her body more as an object did she get that high amount of publicity. You know,
Right.
the really tight, skin tight outfits that she wears when she you know when she competes and stuff like that. She was always good, but it wasn't until she started doing those things
Right.
that she get that
Right.
notoriety.
They're
So-
like,
Right.
oh, she's good. And did you see her backside?
Right. Right.
They're like, look at her forehead, but the
Right.
camera's only focused down like her legs, waist area.
Right.
Yeah. And you're like,
Right.
where's the forehead? I can't see it.
Indeed. So, I mean, you know, it's interesting, and I hope in later shows we'll talk a little bit about the black image in terms of men and women and how that's been corrupted and what America views as beautiful in terms of black people and how we will correct America and remind them of what truly is beautiful. So it's really, really interesting build there. So, of course, we're going to begin with the current events. We have some really interesting news that have happened as of late. So why don't we just go around the round table. Peace.
Yeah, so one that stood out to me was through ESPN.com, and it basically, the headline is Electronic Trail Helps MLB with Bans. So if you're not familiar with what went down last week, but basically the MLB suspended, I don't remember how many players, but a good amount of players, one of the most notable being A-Rod. Most of them got 50-game bans, but A-Rod got like 211 games.
And that's a unpaid.
Unpaid, right.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
so...
Is his rent also going to be banned too?
Man.
He will have to pay that to 200 and some games?
You know what I mean? But the deepest part of that whole incident to me was how they figured out that these players were involved with this company called Biogenesis, which is the producer of human growth hormone. It was through Facebook friends, transcripts, and transcripts of BlackBerry instant messages, as well as records of text messages.
Facebook friends.
Yeah. So
They snitched on them.
They
Are they
snitched.
really friends?
You know what I mean? But
Damn feminists.
it's crazy because this is like the first time in MLB history that they actually, had a ban based on what they found outside of a drug test. So it's not like they actually came up positive in drug tests.
Oh.
Yeah, it was
Wow.
strictly on the strength of this right here. So
Interesting.
So these are just allegations and people that may have been caught doing something they weren't supposed to be doing. So you want to kind of, pull some other people into the situation.
Right, or maybe it sounds like it was some people talking about what they had done
yeah,
over a medium which they didn't think someone was going to be paying
Right.
attention.
right. And, a quote from the U.S. anti-doping agency CEO Travis Tygart is to catch the most sophisticated, intentional fraudsters, you have to use non-analytical means, which is another reason why baseball's effort here is such a pivotal moment for our anti-doping fight.
Wow.
So now we look at this, we can just look at it from baseball, but you gotta look deeper. You know what I mean?
Right.
If they're doing this in baseball, they're probably gonna, we know that they're doing it in other venues. So just be mindful of what you do.
For sure. I mean, that's just like the parents. I don't know if we covered that story, but the parents who looked up pressure cookers and backpacks. Pressure cooker because she's so-called Mexican, and they have a certain kind of grain that she wanted to cook, and you need to cook it at a high temperature, so you need a pressure cooker. Makes sense? So they looked for one, like most people do nowadays. They use the internet, right? Well, I mean, why would you go store to store and say, spend gas? So then, same time, kids are going back to school. So like most parents do, right? It's time to buy backpacks because you can't. How dare you go to school with last year's backpack? Right? Oh man, that's just terrible. So they're looking for backpacks on the internet. You put the two together, SWAT team shows up at these people's house with guns, to investigate them because they could be potential terrorists. No prior records, no nothing, no cause for any kind of alarm yet.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
You know, because they're watching what you do over the internet.
Man.
Check out startpage.com for a little bit more privacy.
The funniest thing about all of this to me, when it comes to the whole steroid issue in sports, is that it's very hypocritical because how can you use steroids in animals, chickens, cows, things of that nature? We eat that. We eat the steroids. So all of us are walking around with some form of steroid in our body. Not only that, but through medication, they give people steroids all the time. But you're telling these athletes that they can't use it. You know what I mean? It's really hypocritical.
That's a really good point and analogy.
Yeah.
I mean, really, if the general public, if we would take more of a stance on these issues, you know, as it really affects more people, we would see quite a bit of change in health and nutrition and things going on in our environment. You know, it's just amazing the things that we pick and choose to protest about, which takes us back to a previous show where, as far as Trayvon Martin, it's just that those of you who view the media, this has been our message from the beginning, that, you know, don't allow the media to pick and choose what you want to protest against or what you disagree or agree with. You really have to look deeper, do your research, and of course listen to the Knowledge of Self Radio show to begin picking some things that are a little bit more, pressing to fight against, so to speak. So it's really good information. Why don't we go on to the next one? I know Shaquille has a couple to hit us with.
So this one I found really interesting. Being a computer guy when I was younger, I would always joke around and I would say, you know, as soon as either I figure out or they figure out how to make a computer that could be a woman, I'm with it, right? Because computers make so much more sense, right? As far as, I know I'm probably going to get hate mail. Go ahead and send that to Ray. But, you know, that's one thing I used to say, because computers to me make much more sense. And so there's always a logical reason why something wasn't working, right? Whereas you'd come home, and as a man, sure, a lot of you can attest to it, you come home and you're like, why are you mad at me for something that happened? When was this? What, like 2 weeks ago? I don't remember what I did yesterday. Right? So, to the news article in realitypod.com, researchers at Toshiba Robotic Research Institute figured out how to make a robot that is capable of having those feelings such as love and care and emotion and desire for a thing. And so they tested it out first with the doll. And then the robot cuddled up to the doll, and then when it was absent, it would ask, "Where is," you know, whatever name they gave it, and it inquired about it. And it had feelings and stuff like that. So they're So they're saying, you know, it's not too far off where they can make companions for you that will have feelings. And so, you know, of course they're going to probably introduce it. Well, Japan's an interesting place. So who knows how they're going to introduce it in Japan.
Right.
As far as America goes, you know, it'll probably be, you know, your person living in Beverly Hills who's going to have a robot nanny. Right? Because it'll care for your kids. And, who knows where it can go from there.
Didn't actually fall in love with the intern too, or something like that? Or
We'll link the article on the thing, but I had feelings for her.
Almost. It didn't want to let her leave the room or whatever like that.
Right. So I guess they still got some programming to go.
So back to artificial intelligence, huh?
Man.
iRobot. Right? If you guys haven't seen that movie, check that out.
It's real. It's real.
I know you had another one to hit on.
Oh yeah. I was going to share away my turn, but
I have one too.
Go ahead.
I'll jump in.
Round table, bro.
Yeah. Cool. So this one actually comes from Tech Eye, and this one is dealing with Apple. Apple actually just had. This is the title: is Apple patents tech to let cops switch off iPhone video, camera, and Wi-Fi whenever they see fit.
Ooh.
Yeah. So. Basically, Apple has patented a piece of technology which would allow government and police to block transmission of information, including video, photographs, whenever they like.
Wow. So that whole, you know, when they do those illegal checkpoints,
right,
or when they pull you over for no reason,
or when they shoot someone in the back that's handcuffed.
Right, yeah, you can just disable all proof prior to doing. That's the equivalent of saying, yeah, pull over in this dark alley.
Right. Right.
Off the side street.
Yeah. Yeah. So this comes from Apple, a statement that basically says Apple insists that the affected sites are mostly cinemas, theaters, concert grounds, and similar locations. But it does admit that it could be used in covert police and government operations, which may require complete blackout conditions. It's deep.
Wow.
It's scary, man.
Yeah, it's deep.
Wow. They've already told you that they're getting ready for martial law.
It's deep.
And we definitely told you guys that they've been having training drills, and you're probably in your local city too. If you live in a major city, they're probably having training drills. You know, if not now, in the future, and they've had them recently.
Right.
Definitely in LA.
I mean, and also it's important that we look at America's history. You know, how have they historically dealt with controlling large groups of people, and then you can expand that to the world. There always has to be some event that triggers martial law. So we know that, you know, governments, you know, when they want to reassert themselves on the population of people they're governed, they'll pick a specific event and make that happen or orchestrate it, and then, you know, put a more fierce security plan in place. You know, for those of you who are kind of into the, I don't know, the mystic fields of science and masonry, you'll hear order out of chaos spoken quite frequently. So, you know, when you begin studying the science of everything in life, you will see these connections. You know, so fantastic.
That's deep. That's deep. I've got an article here talking about a journalist, an award-winning journalist. He actually was in many recent battles, you know, filming, right? So he has no guns to shoot back. Has his camera. That's his, you know, his defense mechanism. Basically, he comes up with some information and lets his closest friends know. He sends out an email letting them know, hey, look, I've come across some really important information, and it's going to blow the lid on a lot of CIA governmental stuff. But, you know, they're like after me. They're invading my family, going through all that stuff. I'm going into hiding. He gets into his car, travels down the street, and his car blows up. Yeah, so, you know, initially they were saying that it was, you know, he read a red light and smashed into a tree. So when people go to investigate this tree, there's no evidence of a crash. And so you have reports, and initially, you know, they weren't releasing the tape. So that's why it's interesting. You said they can shut down iPhones and stuff. So they weren't releasing the tape, but all the witnesses were saying that, yeah, we saw an explosion underneath the car. The engine shot out of the back of the car. So let's just think about how fast. I mean, I'm not a physicist, but I know that you need to be going faster than probably what a car is capable of going to be able to hit a tree and have your engine fly out of the back of your car. And so, yeah, they landed on the tree. And so now they've got, if you look up the story, the reporter is Michael Hastings. And, yeah, you can just put in a search for that. We'll put the story up on the Knowledge Itself site.
Wow, that name sounds familiar.
Yeah, you've heard of him all over, like Iraq probably, and maybe like Geraldo days, I want to say. Yeah. And they said that this, and you know, they're talking to all his friends, and they said that this was the first time that dude was actually afraid. Yeah, because all over Iraq and whatever other wars he was in, video camera, they said he was never afraid.
Wow.
Yeah, people shooting, he'd be like, yeah, whatever, taking pictures, no big deal. And this time, dude was afraid.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's serious. But another interesting thing is his wife was just on CNN. So you guys can look up that, the CNN report where his wife. Now, prior to this, at the funeral, it is alleged that she was saying that, you know, in tears, crying, that she's going to do everything within her power to bring down these people responsible, you know, for this event. On the CNN report, it's quite a different person. You know what I mean? She's happy. She looks radiant, not looking sad. And when the news reporter brings up conspiracy theory and could it be, she's like, no, it's an unfortunate event.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you got to think there. Like, how do you go from tears and saying I'm going to find out who's responsible, and I know that it wasn't what they say it is, to
it must be because she's not a robot, right?
They figured out the program,
right?
The robot, they just altered that.
I mean, of course, I'm sure she has much to lose, but it would have been interesting to be a fly on the wall to hear what that conversation was with CNN.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That changed her so suddenly, from one media source to the next.
Right. Right.
Thank you for sharing that, God. I have a current event. It's actually featured on CNN.com, and it's called the Mars Project 2022. And the headline says 100,000 want to go to Mars. So this is basically confirming the fact that there is a plan to not only send people to Mars in 2022, but to also begin colonizing the planet. So what they're doing is they're offering applications to anyone who would be interested in making the trip to Mars. So
I saw that movie with Ice Cube. I am not going to Mars. Yeah, that's not a good idea.
Total Recall.
It's interesting what you said, because one of the concerns is how they're going to maintain, what would be considered livable sources,
habitat.
A livable habitat. Like, how much is that going to cost?
Right.
And I'm sure there's going to be liability, but they said that the first group that lands there, it'll cost them about $6 billion to go. That's some big money.
Wow.
So the people who are going to go first will pay the $6 billion. But I have these prices here.
So that's like the homie down the street. He'll be going.
Well, hey, according to this,
okay,
he can, because they have. You actually can begin filling out applications, and it says here, quote, anyone 18 or older may apply, but the fee depends on a user's nationality. For Americans, it's $38. If you're in Mexico, however, it's a mere $15. So one of the things, another thing that it says is that Mars One, that's the project.
Okay.
It says that it's going to select a multi-continental group of 40 astronauts this year, end quote, to begin scouting out Mars colonization. So it's pretty interesting to see what damage is being done on this planet by the powers that be.
Right.
But remember, you always have your ticket out.
Right.
So, make some comparisons, everyone. Don't just allow this to be a Hollywood event.
Yeah,
Why are people talking about colonizing another planet when we are already contributing to the destruction of this planet?
Right. Why not use that money to, my bad, but why not use this money to fix up this planet?
Right.
Yeah. No, it's funny because a movie just came out this weekend. I didn't get to see it, but it's called like Elysium or something like that.
Yeah, I wanted to check that out.
It's basically touching on the same topic. It's about an elite class of people destroyed Earth, and then they left, and I think they colonized it. I think it was either Mars or the Moon or somewhere, but they basically rule Earth from there.
Wow.
And they don't allow anybody from Earth to actually go there. And it's about this individual who's, basically trying to go there and, get the people in a better state of living. But
that's deep.
Yeah.
I just watched this anime, and I can't remember the name of it, but it's about the same kind of thing where this guy gets sent down from Earth basically onto this other planet, and how everyone wants to go. Basically, the people on Earth or this other planet rule Earth. From this other planet,
right?
And then they vanquish people, or the undesirable people, to this other planet.
That's deep.
It's interesting how Hollywood is sort of a predictive tool about plans that are made.
I think also what they do is they get people prepared for things. Like the more you see something, the more comfortable you become with it.
Right.
And then the more comfortable you become with it, the more apt you'll sit back and let it happen. So.
Right. No, for sure. And there's definitely reports. I mean, we did a show about that, how
Yeah.
TV programs you. But there's definitely reports to where, and you can see it in women, for example, to where back in the days before like the introduction of horror movies, where you'd see the woman, she'd be like, ah! And she'd run and she'd fall down and look behind her like, oh no. Right. And everyone in the movie would be, get up, what are you doing laying there? Right?
Yeah.
To now, women nowadays actually do that. They fall and they're kind of like, oh no. Yeah. Right? It's because they grew up in that cycle of watching it on TV and the programming of this is what's supposed to do. Yeah, it's an ill thing. I'll post some links about it, but yeah, they talked about how people respond to situations the way that they see in the television or the movies that they watch. Right? So when you have the majority of movies or a television show breaking up the family, showing that the man is not strong and that the woman is the ruler of the family, and different situations like that, then people begin to act out these things. So it's the reversal, whereas they would say art imitates life. Now it's like life is imitating art.
Right.
And so they really have us living other than our own selves.
Yeah, that's real. That's real.
Did you want to add on one more event?
Yeah.
About
This was an
one?
interesting one, huh?
The bear one. Right?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay.
You can do the bear
Okay.
one. I found this interesting. So you can find this on Huffington Post. Basically, and I didn't see anyone in LA. I don't know maybe if you guys did. But recently there have been people who were hanging signs saying let's impeach Obama in Los Angeles, Texas. There's another major city.
Wow.
And it's just random campaigns. Groups of people who just got together and they were like, hey, you know what? And it's not necessarily Obama, but they definitely frontline Obama, but it's the NSA and all those kind of groups. But I guess the theory is Obama kind of represents those spaces, which, I mean, I can see that. From what I understand, there's 4 people who really run the NSA. He's the main person who picks the other 3.
Right.
So I guess, if you're after that person. But in any event, yeah, it's popping up all over town. It's a random...
Well, I mean, being the age I am, I've heard what they wanted to impeach Clinton. And what you're saying is Obama now. I don't remember if
Bush
anyone
too.
was saying, impeach Bush.
Yeah.
It never appears to happen.
It doesn't, right?
So exempting Richard Nixon. But other than that, they generally don't pursue that for whatever reason. But it's really interesting that came up.
Yeah.
What's going on with Bear, though?
Oh, man, and we did a show on this.
Bear like, rawr, allergic to bear.
Man, it's a grisly situation. This comes from realpharmacy.com. Basically, the headline is Bayer and the U.S. government knowingly gave HIV to thousands of children.
Wow. Same people who have the children aspect,
exactly right? Exactly right. So back in 1984, Bayer became aware of that several of its batches of Factor VIII, which is a hemophiliac medication or an injection, became contaminated with HIV.
That damn monkey that no one can find must have slipped its way.
That's right. That's a sneaky monkey, man.
Sneaky monkey. Ninja monkey.
Right. So basically the way that they figured it out was a bunch of children that were treated with this Factor VIII in America actually came up with HIV. So
what a coincidence.
Right. So basically what they did, instead of losing, which would have been, I think, like $8 million or something, some ridiculous number like that, they sold the medication to Argentina, Indonesia, Japan, Malaysia, and Singapore.
Then everyone's sharing the experience, right?
Right.
Yeah, so this is according to documents from the New York Times. And it said that tens of thousands were infected and hundreds of, thousands actually died from this HIV situation.
Wow. So, of course, there's huge protests, and this has been all over the news.
Man.
And people are going crazy in the streets.
Right.
Riots going on all over the place.
Is that why it took me so long to get in?
Yeah, it must be.
Okay. So, I mean, what is it? What is the aftermath of this? I mean, it just seems like when we hear these types of things come out, and we'll continue to bring these things to you. I know on one of our shows where we talked about vaccinations and malaria and things of that nature, we did mention that faulty condoms have been given out in South Africa one year, but it just seems like an apology is made. Yeah. Maybe 20 years later, but no one is held responsible. So you said something in terms of $8 million?
Yeah, some ridiculous number like that. Yeah.
Right. I mean, honestly, that's not enough to compensate for the loss of life, man.
Oh, no. This is how much they would have lost if they actually didn't sell the medication.
Yeah, they would have taken a hit, $8 million hit, if they hadn't sold the product. Just like similar to the swine flu thing, and America the next day happened to have all these vaccines for swine flu, which is on record that were like 2 years old and didn't work worth a damn. In any event, sold it to Mexico and made millions of dollars overnight.
So it's worse than I interpreted it then.
Yeah. So instead of losing $8 million, which in the long run isn't anything, they valued $8 million more than they valued the lives of the people.
Exactly. Didn't we say something about bear on a previous show? I know it came up, man. I mean, we cover a lot of square miles on this show. So, again, I encourage you, the viewers, our family out there, to look at our archive shows, through our KOS 9 radio channel, as well as on YouTube, because there are a lot of things that we brought up, even if we spend a couple of minutes on those specific topics. They're still there, and we'll try to revisit as time goes on. Great current events. Why don't we go ahead and take a brief break, and we'll be back at you with the first segment of the show about sports and black exploitation. Peace.
Peace.
Peace, and welcome back to the Knowledge Yourself Radio Show. My name is Teray Allah. I'm one of the hosts. My brothers are here as also.
Peace, Jakil Knowledge Allah.
Peace, Jarul Allah.
And we're going to begin our talk about sports and black exploitation. So let's hit you with some of the references, and then we'll give you a brief segue into the content. Again, we drew from Bring Your A Game by Mario Van Peebles, and a variety of articles. I'll just read a couple to you. We have an interesting article on Forbes.com, and it also gives you pictures about some of the athletes that fell into bankruptcy and/or financial crises during their professional career. These were people who didn't retire, though. You know, it happened during their professional career, right? Also, there is a really interesting article as the topic was introduced to me by Jeru about the struggle that retired NFL players have years after they're long and forgotten. This was on the www.washingtonpost.com. We also have another reference which comes from www.nba.com, Suns News 101 Debate, and teacherscholastic.com, which gives you a really interesting argument about the benefits and or the consequences of young people being recruited into professional sports after high school, or at least during high school. So some of these are some really interesting takes on today's topic. So before we begin, I wanted to sort of give you a picture in terms of why we decided to do this particular show. We can just, you know, rewind several hundred years when black people were brought here against their will and forced or coerced to work on plantations in the wilderness of North America, which you know as the United States of America. And if you want to approach this topic today symbolically, you should picture how many of us were introduced into North America once we were enslaved, whereas we were put on an auction block and several slave masters and or plantation owners had the opportunity to look at who you know, was the best person to buy. So not only were our people presented to this crowd of buyers at this auction, but our people were also measured and checked like animals. So their mouths were checked, their body shape was, you know, looked at and analyzed, and, you know, he's big here, she's large here, he weighs this, how old is he? These types of things came up in the discussions, which in turn led to, who were their parents, and in turn that led to a human being, whether it be a man or woman, being auctioned off. Right. So now in these modern times, we still have the equivalent of that in professional sports. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk to you a little bit about how black and brown people are being sold, and also if we can think of Caucasians being sold as well into this arena that we call professional sports. So why don't we go ahead and get into the first part of it. We're going to talk a little bit about the owners versus the players. So I know we had talked a little bit about the youth and high school recruiting. So why don't we just bring it around the round table about what are some of the benefits and or the consequences of young people being recruited shortly before they exit high school straight into professional sports.
Well, I mean, the recruiting actually a lot of times nowadays, man, it starts in like middle school.
Wow.
And, you know, definitely basketball, a lot of basketball players. And, you know, you could thank players like Kobe Bryant.
Sean Kemp.
You know, Sean Kemp. You know, LeBron James, who have been successful playing in the NBA. You know, it kind of started I think LeBron James was the most, publicized, because his high school games were actually on ESPN. So, yeah.
Wow.
So nowadays, if there's a player with the potential to become LeBron-like, he's already getting publicity 7th, 8th grade. You know what I mean, going into high school. You know, so.
I remember seeing kind of the introduction to that, where you see the McDonald's high school games.
Right.
That's old school, right? Yeah.
Right. So wasn't that those were like, they were full games.
Yeah, it was All-American. Yeah, it's an All-American game. It's all
McDonald's was sponsoring them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that great corporation that sells that healthy meat
Exactly.
and pink slime. I mean, chicken nuggets.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say, some of the effects as a child that it's going to have on you is you're not going to necessarily look at education as your way out.
McDonald's or the
Right. Education over sports. You're not going to really look at that as your way out because you're already getting notoriety for what you do on the basketball court or the football field and things of that nature. So that's where your mind and your focus and your energy is going to go.
That's a great point.
Right. So then dudes who actually do make it didn't take any time to educate themselves, and that's how you see them get exploited once they get to that level.
Right.
Because there's no knowledge in their head how to deal with their finances, how to really analyze people to know, okay, this is a good person for me business-wise. They could actually benefit me and help my business grow. They don't know any of that, so they get exploited.
Right,
you know what I mean?
For sure. I was watching this documentary on ESPN. I didn't know ESPN did documentaries.
Oh, yeah.
In any event, they made one called Broke, and they're talking about this exact
It's called
subject.
Broke? Okay.
Yeah, I linked it on the KOS Facebook. In any event, a lot of what you were saying was true. So they take these kids, even let's say the ones that make it into college. Nowhere in the college class are they being taught how to manage money, who to choose to manage the money, right? And so they have, they have no, what's the word I'm looking? They've never been shown this before, right? They have
no foundation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So then when they hit it, suddenly, okay, so you've come most likely from a poor neighborhood, you know what I mean? And then they're like, okay, here's who's that one basketball player? Anyway, they gave this one kid, he was 20 years old, they gave him a Ferrari, didn't even know how to drive a stick, and a couple $1 million. And that's what he said. He goes, I have this really nice Ferrari that stays in my garage because I don't know how to drive a stick.
Wow.
And so it's like, you get these kids who haven't been introduced, that's what I was looking for, introduced into anything, right? And so they have no experiences, no interaction. So like you said, they don't know, okay, yeah, my agent, he says he can be my financial advisor. I don't know enough to know that this dude shouldn't be my financial advisor. I should separate those groups. No one told me that, right? So he says he can do it. I let him do it.
Yeah,
now this dude is taking money out of my account and all kind of craziness.
Now, let me hear that Hosea 4:6 again.
Oh, yeah, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge.
Well, there it is.
Indeed.
There it is.
Indeed. So I think that's really important because both of you brought up two things. You brought up lack of education, right? And then you brought up the materialism that's involved with professional athleticism. So I think a really good movie, if you really want to look at something a little bit more graphic as far as what my brothers were saying, you can watch He Got Game starring Denzel Washington. So there's a really interesting scene in that movie where Denzel Washington's son is going around to different colleges because all these different colleges want them to play for him. Of course, his father has another motive. He's trying to push him towards this college so he can be released from his prison sentence. But in any case, some of the goings on, some of the temptation that he came across, the loose women and the promise of, instant celebrity status. This being on a college campus. So you can imagine the temptation that exists for someone who's 18 and now. I think they changed the law to where they can't recruit them until a year after they've graduated from high school. I think.
As far as
the most recent rule that they changed.
The NBA you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, you can't go straight from high school to the NBA anymore.
Right.
You have to actually play. I think 1 year of college, or you have to be out of 1 year of college, but you have to be out of high school for I think 1 year, 1 or 2 years, or something like that. But yeah.
So now, as far as that particular change, I mean, do you think in some way that harms more mature athletes coming out of high school? Because there are some really mature high school athletes that know what they want to do. They were really focused students. And honestly, they want their big break. They know what they're going to do in college, and they know what they want the outcome to be. So do those athletes need that 4 years?
I would say no. Honestly, I think it's harmful on many levels because, you think about some of the communities that these young kids come from, and they're not going to schools that are producing scholars, you know what I mean, on a daily basis, right? So that being said, their only way out a lot of times is sports. So you say if you have a huge family that's starving and you have the ability to play in the NBA and make millions of dollars, how can you tell that person, no, you can't do it, you have to wait, you have to go to college, which a lot of people fall to the wayside because they're not about school. Right, they know their talent is sports.
College may not even be a feasible financial option for a lot of these people. That's expensive.
And let's look at the hypocrisy, because the hypocrisy is that Hollywood or the music industry, they won't even consider the cost of recruiting a child to sing or perform for their company, right? Of course, they get parental consent, but then you have those students who they're on, they may be getting home study or they study during different times of the year. However, it's the same idea. It's like they don't have those same sort of stipulations and contracts dealing with young musicians that they do with athletes. Right. So it's really hypocritical to sort of say that, well, this group can do it, but this group can't. Right. And this is a really interesting topic. I mean,
and that's the one thing that I would say would be the disadvantage to going from high school to the pros, right? Is that when your ACL tears or whatever effed up event happens to you, when that happens, right, and you can no longer generate money based on your divine ability to dribble a ball or to catch a ball, whatever it is, then what happens?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so all you have is a high school diploma to fall back on?
Right.
What life experiences did you gain? Or none, because you allowed your investor or your agent to do everything for you, right? Or your financial advisor. So you don't know how to manage your money. You don't understand what it's like to say, okay, I only have this amount of money. I can only spend this, and I need to use this for da-da-da-da. Right. You don't have those skills. And then how do you even generate? So, like a lot of times, and they cover this in that Broke documentary, what was it? Holyfield, Evander Holyfield bought this huge house, right? Then when he became champion, he added on even bigger. He's got 2 bowling alleys and all this madness, and it looks dope on MTV Cribs. Right? And then now, like a 2-part series or something, right? And so now he can't pay for any of it. Yeah. And then it's in foreclosure.
Right. And he's still trying to box at, 50, 60
years
old?
Yeah. Wow. And so you can't support your lifestyle that you're living. But they don't teach these kids that. And they don't tell any of these things, right? And so, you come into the thing and you're like, well, how dope would it have been? When I was younger, I always wanted to have a Ferrari. And I also wanted to have a Lamborghini. And I also wanted to have the dope SUV and the house. Well, okay. So how do you continue to pay for all these things?
Right.
Right?
Right. I mean, really, really great points. I think where we should take them is the whole idea of how our inception, or at least later on in history, as enslaved people in the Americas, because remember, we came here thousands of years ago, okay, before we were brought here enslaved. So let's, again, we refer you to some older shows that we did about that.
Right.
But for the most part, let's begin with, how is it that professional sports is exploiting athletes? I know, Jerul, you mentioned combine because you are an athlete, and your history is in football among other sports.
Yeah.
But can you go into the build about the combine and how that sort of symbolizes the whole auctioning off?
It just sounds like a scary place.
Yeah.
Go to the combine.
Right. Not Columbine.
Not
Combine.
But no, basically when you look at the combine, all the combine really is a place that they take the athletes or the greater athletes from the past year's college a season, and they put them in a bunch of events and different things to analyze their abilities. So like you mentioned, the auction block, and how they would analyze the different so-called slaves and look at their attributes, their strengths, their weaknesses, and things of that nature. The combine is basically symbolic to that. So they do things like see how fast you can run, see how high you can jump. They'll measure your hands, measure your feet. They'll put you through tests to see your psychological ability as far as your the chances of you be having psychosis or psychotic episodes, like your man Hernandez, the dude who just is getting convicted of killing his friend or his associate or whatever like that. So it's just basically they take you through a whole bunch of tests to make sure that they're getting the best individual for said team. But it's the same process basically that they went through on the auction block. Obviously, it's not to the degree of the auction block, but there's symbolism there definitely.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And also that whole process of becoming a professional athlete, it does lead to an identity crisis at some point, especially if you're young and you got it really young. So, just as Jaquil was mentioning, when they give these young people these material items and their name is in lights, but very few of their coaches or more experienced people outside of their team, they're not taking them under their wing and kind of talking to them like, hey, think about it this way. And if I'm not mistaken, you guys can correct me. If I'm wrong, I always do it anyway. If I'm not mistaken, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar would tell the younger players when they would join the team, he would have a talk to them, and one of the things that he told them was, sign your own checks. Because if I'm not mistaken, he did have some situation like that at some point in his career where money was stolen from him. But again, when you bring it from that perspective, the combine, and now I'm going to measure you psychologically as well as physically, it really reduces you to just an object.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Well, so that's interesting, right? Because what is it? You only have what did it say? The average of playing in the NBA or the NFL is like 3 years.
Yep.
3 years. Why is it only 3 years?
Well, football is it's a contact sport, very, very abusive type of sport. So your chances of injury, probably 50%, maybe even higher than that. Probably higher than that, maybe 75. You're gonna get injured, but career-ending injury, is a little different. But it's a punishing game, So think about it. For example, when you play 3 years in the NFL, you've already played a good 8 to 10 years prior to that.
Wow.
And you've been, basically going through collisions for 10 years, and now you're playing against the best athletes in the world, going through collisions.
Hardest hitting athletes,
fastest, strongest. Now you're hitting these guys, and of course your body's going to start to break down.
Sure.
So.
Wow, sure. And let's not even talk about the pension plan that takes place. Or the expected pension plan of some of the athletes. I know that we were talking a little bit about that. I had read while we were studying this that there's a certain percentage that NFL athletes are given, and I think in the 1980s, since they were paying athletes far less than they are now. I mean, I'm gonna say anywhere around 10% of what that athlete was making while they were playing for that NFL team would then be contributed to their pension. So let's say someone who was making about, I don't know, give me a little round number, like $300,000 over the course of their NFL contract. They would only get about 10% of that every month.
Right.
Okay.
Not to mention taxes, right?
Right.
So a lot of times people don't factor in the tax benefit, right?
Uh-huh.
You see these big numbers, you're like, well, that's a lot of zeros. But that dude's got to pay taxes on all those zeros.
Right.
Yeah, and I think the retirement for NFL players doesn't kick into their 55.
Wow.
So if you play for 3 years, you come out of college, you're like 21, 22 years old.
Right.
play till you're 25. Now you got to wait till you're 55 to get any benefits.
Long time.
You
What
know?
kind of house did you just buy?
Right.
How many houses did you just buy?
And think
Cars and man.
And people tend to focus on the huge contracts that a lot of these rookies get, but the majority of those rookies aren't making a whole lot.
Right.
You know, 100,
Right.
maybe 500,000. You know, league minimum a lot of times. So if they play for 3 years on the league minimum, you know, they're not going to have a whole lot of money to sit back on. So,
Which was another interesting thing they brought up on that documentary. We were kind of talking about it. You know, like you said, not everyone is paid these big figures, right? So, you know, let's take the Lakers, for example. So we have Kobe making the big money.
right.
And then you got that one dude who sits on the bench that only people who really know about basketball know his name. Like, who's definitely not making Kobe money.
Right.
But when they go hang out and they see Kobe floss, right, they too want to floss.
Right.
But you don't have Kobe money.
Right.
Right? So it's like you've got champagne money with only beer funds.
That's
But
deep.
you still try and spend champagne money.
Right.
Right? And then like you said, you know, you're not making... you know, you got taxes and injuries that you have to pay for after, you know, after you get hurt. After the season over, you paid your 3 years or 4 years. You still have to repair yourself, right? So how do you pay for all that?
Right. And then not to mention, you know, like we spoke earlier, these individuals come from communities where they don't have anything. So you're the only one in your family who's making large amounts of money.
Everyone's your friend
you
now.
know, right. You got cousins, you got you know, old long lost sisters that you didn't know
Maybe
about
when
popping
they
up.
changed your diaper.
Right.
And,
You know,
like,
so
no.
you know, average person's gonna give them a little something, you know, try to help them out.
Yeah. You feel bad.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
and I could totally see that. You
Yeah.
know, me having, if I came across a large sum of money, and then I see someone else who maybe I grew up with or hung out with, you know, your buddies, you'd be like, all right, well, I had this opportunity and I can only do these things because I got a chance. Let me try and give you a chance too. And then let me try and give you a chance, and let me try and give you a chance. And
Well, you know,
you lose a lot of money that way.
Right. It's interesting that you brought that up. One of our references is from the great HuffingtonPost.com. It's /2012/05/31. It's titled NFL Players Broke, Bankrupt, and they list some of the reasons as to why these players, as was mentioned here, generally wind up bankrupt. And then they have this interesting list of several athletes who have gone so. For example, gross versus net was number 1. Okay, and what the guy just said here, how much is taken out for taxes and other deductions is never considered when these athletes get these deals. All right. I'm just going to skip a few. Aside from the cost of vanity, they have listed weak financial counsel. This was stated. Bad investments. And a bad investment could be something as simple as a car. You know, as you mentioned, that Ferrari, as soon as you drive that car off of the parking lot or off of the, you know, the auto parking lot, it depreciates in value. It's not worth $100,000 anymore.
Right.
What are you going to say, guys?
Right. No, I was going to say, not only that, they talked about athletes who at least had the intelligence enough to try to start a business, right? But what were they saying? A lot of people tried to do like car washes, which failed. What were some other bad investments? Someone bought a McDonald's and a Burger King. And, you know, like they said, what is it? Something like 1 out of every 30 investments.
Wow.
Yeah, actually, 1 out of 30 people actually get an investment and get it to go through and make it work, right? So you're talking about a small, narrow margin of people.
Yeah.
And so, you know, a lot of times they make these bad investment deals from people who are not investment dealers themselves, right? You know, you have a friend who heard from a friend that he can do this great thing and he just needs $50,000 and you guys can be living large. So you're like, oh, okay, yeah, why not? And then another thing they hit on that documentary is that towards the end of people's career, so like let's say the people who were lucky enough to play 5+ years, right? Now that they've kind of spent that money, right, and they're broke, they're realizing, well, damn, I need to figure out something to do. So now they're taking more riskier investments and deals, and they're losing out bigger too.
Wow.
And part of it, like you said, you left out vanity, but it's the whole competition factor, right? So you got to realize these are the best of the best, right? Anyone who made it into the NFL or the NBA, no matter what you have to say about that dude, he made it into the NFL or the NBA, right? And so you're highly competitive, and so you're going to want to compete at everything you do. That's just kind of in your nature.
You know? Yeah.
And they also added divorce. So that, you know.
Who was that got hit for like $100 million? Some tennis player, I think, when he divorced his wife. Yeah.
Not up on that, guys.
Oh, man.
You know, maybe that'd be something we can look into during the break.
Prenups, man, important.
Prenuptial agreements.
Michael Jordan, right? How much did Michael Jordan get hit for when he broke up with his wife?
Good question.
And I know it's a large sum of money.
I think that is continuing. Oh, you have this endorsement? I didn't know that. Come on, let's renegotiate.
Yeah, again, these are things that, you know, a lot of these younger players coming up in the games don't really get told, or if they do get told, they don't pay attention.
It's funny because they do have like a little rookie symposium or something like that.
Yeah, people fall asleep. Right. No one takes that serious.
And did y'all hear about you know, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's what is it, his nephew or?
Nah.
He's a professional basketball player.
Okay.
But he got kicked out of the symposium based specifically on him having women in his room.
Wow.
I thought that was interesting.
Wow, the minister's nephew.
Right. I thought that was interesting.
Well, on that note, why don't we go ahead and take a couple of minutes break and come back into it about sports and black exploitation. Peace. Peace. Welcome back to the Knowledge Yourself Radio Show. My name is Teray Allah, my righteous brothers.
Jakil Knowledge Allah.
Peace, Jerul Allah.
And the last time we spoke with you, we were talking about some of the things that take place when young people are recruited into professional sports or on professional sports teams, and the different levels of exploitation that takes place, not only through we might as well call the documented ownership of the player, but also what they don't have after the game is over. So I wanted to ask, I know Jerul, you were definitely up on this research, seeing as how you have a long history in sports and athletics and coaching. About what percentage of people would you say that want to go into the NFL are actually actually make it?
Man, probably 1%, some real small number. You know.
This is something like one out of. It's only 30 spots available, or something for anyone to make it. And you've got hundreds of people trying to fill those 30 spots.
Yeah. So you think about the combine or the draft. They draft what 7 rounds of 30. 32 teams draft for 7 rounds. So 32 times 7. That's the amount of players that not necessarily make it. They get drafted, but a lot of them get cut and they don't get to play.
Right.
So,
Yeah. That's another good point.
I mean? So there's a lot of players that just fall to the wayside. With no foundation. So you fall into the wayside and you have nothing to fall back on. So what are you gonna end up doing? Getting to crime, going back to the hood. And, it's just.
Right.
How many athletes have we not heard of who were, reported with prostitutes and drugs?
Right.
Exactly.
It's kind of normal.
And getting caught up in the same old thing that they escaped when they came into professional sports. I think that one of the things is we always tell our viewers that anytime you're chasing a believed material success, is the equivalent of chasing a mystery god or something that doesn't exist. So I wanted to briefly talk about how we lose our identity, which is directly related to the amount of exploitation that we get once we come into professional sports. And it's not everyone, but some athletes, quite frankly, they lose their sense of themselves. So Dennis Rodman, whether it be purposely or just through, sheer loss of himself. I remember when he first came into the league, among other things, he just sort of had this transformation take place over the course of the years. And next thing you look up and the man's in a bridal outfit.
Right.
So what is it that happens in professional sports, NFL, NBA, that leads to our people losing a sense of their identity?
Man, I would say, again, to go back to that Broke documentary, was it Andre Rison, I think, who said, he was like, I would look at my right-hand man and be like, he would tell me, you know how much money that we just blew at the club right now? And he'd be like, nope, I have no idea. And you're talking about, you order your table, that's X amount of G's. Now you got to get a bottle, so that's like 5 G's. Now how many bottles are you buying? And now you're making it rain, and making it rain is not good enough. You got to cause
make it pour.
Yeah, so you got to have a tsunami up in there, right? So you just, throw it. And then like they said, the whole competitive thing, right? So you got one dude throwing up 5s, so you're like, well, I'm going to throw 10s. Well, I'm going to throw 50s. Well, I'm going to just throw 100s. I don't care. And so you just have this kind of lavish spending where you then become known as the things that you own. Right. Versus who you are.
And to add on to that, that list that we were looking at earlier, it said keeping up with the vets was another reason why some of the young athletes wound up in bankruptcy. So what you said, you put up a 5, I'm going to put up 10. It becomes, what was stated earlier, a competition.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So what would be some of the other things that would lead to us losing our identity as black professional athletes? Like, wouldn't we wish everyone could be a Jim Brown or Muhammad Ali?
Right.
What happened to those? The times. Okay. Go ahead.
The times, obviously have an influence. During that time, there was more of a black consciousness, more about, taking care of your own and those types of things. So that mentality, was existing then. But in this day and time, it's clear that's not going on. You mentioned Dennis Rodman, and when you look at Dennis Rodman, he was a great player, but he wasn't necessarily your flashy type of player.
Right.
So he was
more going to cross you over.
Exactly. He was a worker. So I think what he was doing was trying to promote himself so that he could make money outside of just being that workman
Right.
type of player.
Right.
And in that aspect, you can say he was very intelligent.
Right,
you know what
right.
I mean? Because he understood that as a player, he only had a limited amount of time.
Right.
And he had to figure out some other way to sell himself.
Right.
If he can, business opportunities or whatever.
Right. No, you're right.
True indeed. And, not everyone's going to achieve that level of success like Michael Jordan. However, I remember Michael Jordan came under fire for the sweatshops that were making his clothing and his shoes.
Right.
And
So
it's
of course
funny.
he denied that publicly, but at the same time it kind of just dropped out of sight.
Well, the funny thing about that is that people always look at the player as the wrongdoer,
Right.
but he's just the face, right? And that's funny because when you look at a company like Nike, which makes $1 billion a year, Jordan obviously works for Nike, and his brand is a branch of Nike. So why wasn't the focus on Nike in the sweatshops?
Wow.
Right.
Man,
Jordan
right.
wasn't the one who was like, let me go find the cheapest, most dirty, messed up sweatshop
Right.
to make these shoes so I can make a killing off of this money. No, he was just like, hey, you guys want to pay me how much money to put my face on a pair of shoes? Okay, cool, I'm with it.
Right. And that's the interesting thing is in terms of exploitation, because I know we wanted to build about Mike Tyson, but if you think about the average not the average, but the professional athlete that has several endorsements, and you think about how much they're earning a shoe company, an athletic gear company, and then you think about how much of the sales they've increased of all of the companies that are benefiting from that athlete wearing their clothing, you wonder how much of this money actually winds up back into the poor or impoverished community that player comes from.
Yeah, let's talk about
Let's build
LeBron.
on that, God.
Let's talk about LeBron James, right? So Nike generated $300 million in U.S. retail sales in 2012.
300 million.
$300 million in retail sales from LeBron James signature shoes, and LeBron is only getting $15 million a year out of that.
Out of that 300 mil, he's only getting 15.
Right. So the shoe sells because of him.
Right.
Because if it wasn't LeBron James' shoe,
they would be
nobody would have bought it.
Right.
But he's only getting $15 million out of that. You know what I mean? So that's deep.
Wow. So that means that a woman divorcing LeBron James would actually walk away with more than he can negotiate for an endorsement for a product. That's what it sounds like to me.
It's real. And LeBron's on the high end as it relates to endorsements.
Right.
And speaking of endorsements, one thing I did want to look at is if you look at a lot of the athletes, especially specifically black and brown athletes, and the endorsements that they get, how do y'all feel about some of the I guess the perception? Like, for example, a lot of these athletes are endorsed by like McDonald's, Burger King, and these types of places. What kind of effect do you think that has on our community?
Wow. Well, I think to begin with, since we do talk about nutrition and we talk about the choices of foods that we, I mean, I would have to go back into my mind and to remember all those commercials. But when you see your favorite basketball player eating a cheeseburger from McDonald's or one of those restaurants, you say to yourself, wow, that's the secret to his superpowers. So, Mom, I want to eat, a Big Mac today.
Right.
So,
in my
how do you see
Nikes.
it? Right.
Yeah. No doubt. I mean, when you look at it, what was I in the mall doing? I forgot. I saw this long line, and I'm thinking, man, I missed out on a movie premiere. Like, what movie are all these people watching, or what famous star is here, or what crazy, are they giving away a Ferrari? What's going on? And no, it was hundreds of people in the mall waiting to buy a shoe. Now, okay, I get wanting to have something before other people, so you got that floss value, that shallows at me. I understand that. But after a certain amount of people, the rest of you guys aren't getting shoes. But they're still waiting for shoes. So that just shows the influence that putting someone's face on something has, right? And so when you talk about, okay, you're putting it on food and now I have to drink Gatorade because Michael Jordan drinks Gatorade. Why wouldn't I drink Gatorade? I've got on my Michael Jordan shoes. I got my Michael Jordan Gatorade, my Michael Jordan shirt made by Hanes, my Michael. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, man, I'm playing just like that dude. And
He plays with Bugs Bunny.
Right. So it's a huge influence, and so. And that goes back to what we talked about in our show when we did about the media and just the power that the media has over people. So I'd say it has a huge influence on what we're eating and what we're spending our money on in our communities. You don't see Michael Jordan or who's the golfer? Tiger Woods, right? You don't see that dude advertising science or advertising even Tommy Hilfiger. I mean, there's certain things that dude is just not selling, and so it seems like they pick certain people to sell certain things to a certain group of people.
Right. So we're going into Mike Tyson. So I can remember when Mike Tyson was in his prime, a video game was released. Mike Tyson had a video game.
Punch Out.
So now how is it that many years later, how is it that he could be struggling financially when he's been in so many games, and you rappers out there keep saying punchlines? I do this like Mike Tyson, I mean, it's hilarious. Mike, make them pay you, So I know you wanted to build extensively on that in terms of how was Mike Tyson exploited through boxing.
Right. I think it's important to deal with understanding, and with understanding that means that you can see how things occur and why they occur. With Tyson, you got to look at where he grew up. If you're by a computer, which you are if you're watching, Google Bed-Stuy, New York, and look at some pictures of it. It literally looks like a bomb was dropped on this part of the city, right? So this is where he came up. He had nothing. His mom was, kind of like a little bit wild type of woman. She was, in the streets and stuff like that. His father wasn't around. Had a stepdad that was abusive, those types of things. So he's getting no foundation, so he became a street kid who gets arrested, goes to prison, or not, he goes to juvenile detention, and there's a boxing coach in the juvenile detention center who was training, the youth in boxing. He saw that Tyson had talent, takes him to another guy, Teddy Atlas and Cus D'Amato, and they groom him into a champion. So by 18 or 19, he basically goes from juvenile detention to being a heavyweight champion.
And of course, they're telling him about finances and economics.
Right. So like you come from Bed-Stuy, now you're the heavyweight champion, making millions of dollars. There is no grooming for that. So quite naturally,
you can't really prepare someone to say, okay, I know you probably haven't even counted this high before, but
right.
Here's this money.
Right.
Yeah.
Now we want you to still be a responsible individual.
Right.
18.
And now you don't know something, so average person who doesn't know something is going to try to find someone who does, right? So you reach out to these people around you, say, "Oh, I can help you with this, help you with that. Just give me this much, give me that much." They're not helping you; they're just blood sucking the life out of you, and that process just happened over and over. Still not gaining any foundation, and then the fame and the glory of being heavyweight champion starts to go to your head, so you feel like you don't need that. And then the lights go off, and you're by yourself, and you're like, "Damn, what happened?"
Right, and all those friends disappear.
All the friends disappear.
I think Serena and Venus Williams would be a really good example of how our athletes are used, whether or not they're asked and agree to be in use. In some way, they're still being used. So you think about the people or the companies that have endorsed them over the years. Let's just say, Puma, for example, would be one of them. And they originate from the city of Compton, even though they live in Florida now. However, when you think about the talent that came out of the city of Compton, beginning with Venus and Serena Williams, the monies that are used to finance these endorsement campaigns, no one ever stops to think in those companies like, you know what, we should really think about doing something like this in the city where they're from, because then maybe we would see a longer, a stronger wave of young people coming in who would have a longer life in the sport than maybe these two. Because I know Venus and Serena, I mean, I saw them when they came into the sport around, well, they were like 13 or 14 when they were like amateurs. I don't exactly remember how old they were when they wound up being professional athletes, but you know, I remember seeing Venus on a Reebok commercial first before anything. And so you're thinking about that long history that they've had with these different companies, yet I don't really see any visible proof that those companies appreciate, first of all, the environment they came from, or even cares about improving the environment. Why? Because I was through there about 2 days ago.
Well, conversely, you know, look at Haynes, like you mentioned. Who does Haynes support? Private prison.
They do. True indeed.
So you got Michael Jordan, the face of Haynes, right?
Putting people in jail.
Wow. So, you know, on that note, why don't we go ahead and take a brief break, and we'll be back at you. Peace.
Peace.
Peace. Welcome back to the Knowledge Yourself Radio Show. My name is Teray Allah.
Peace. Jakil Knowledge Allah.
Peace. Jarul Allah.
And at the conclusion of our show, we're going to talk a little bit about what professional teams make and some really interesting numbers that we wanted to share with you. So I'm going to give this over to Jarul because, you know, he made this knowledge born to me at least. And Jarul, I wanted you to share with the people exactly, you know, how many players, how many original people play on these professional teams, and everything else related. It's some really shocking numbers in terms of that.
Well, first and foremost, the NFL makes about $6 billion a year from just...
That's with a B, right?
Yeah,
Billion.
with a B. Billion.
Okay.
Right? Now, this is just commercials, network, and endorsements. It doesn't necessarily even include ticket sales. It doesn't include concessions, which is, astronomical numbers. So that being said, and NBA teams make about $1 million a year. When we look at the NFL and NBA, the NBA is 82% black, and the NFL is 65% black. How many owners are in those both of those sports, though?
That's a great question.
Well, we'll look at all the major sports. So we'll look at baseball, we'll look at hockey, we'll look at the NFL and the NBA. So out of 122 teams, there's only one black majority owner.
Wow.
So the parallel to slavery is right there. Also, you always hear ESPN and these sports stations tell you how much these players signed for. He made, he had a 6-year, $200 or $100 million contract, right? But they don't really disclose the intricacies of the contract and how much that athlete actually is going to make out of that $100 million.
Right.
They might get a $15 million signing bonus, but after that, who knows how much of that they're going to make? Because more than likely, they're not going to play that 6 years with the team before they have to sign a new deal, which a lot of times they have to sign for less. So they don't really specify all that. Another thing that they don't have to specify, because the NFL teams are privately owned, they don't have to specify how much the owners actually make. So you never hear anyone talking about how much the owners make. You hear anytime a player who's, out there on the field doing the grunt work complaining about they want to make a little bit more money, they get slammed in the media because they're being greedy, they're being this, they're being that. But when you talk, you never hear anything about the owners, though.
How dare they ask for more money?
$15
million is not enough for you?
Right.
You
I think one of the things that we always like to lead people into looking into, you can find some of your own references or look at the link on our website. They have a site called businessinsider.com, and it gives you a list of billionaires that own these sports teams. And I know some of the research, it was just astounding seeing exactly how much some of these people made that own these professional teams. And more than that, there's just I don't see really a legacy of what I would consider black progress, and just this message that's coming from these team owners that, this actually is going to be a source by which we do A, B, C, and D. Because, again, taking you back to the last show, when you think about how many black and brown children are dropping out of high school by the 10th grade, where are all of these multi-billionaire sports teams owners? Where are they in terms of building schools that are more prone to sports and things of that nature? Where are your summer camps?
Right.
Not to where you have like this list of maybe only 100 children can get in, but where are your universities for youth? And there are a lot of things that you can do with $1 million to educate young people,
for sure,
that really won't require $1 million.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I think that says a lot about the morality of some of these people.
Yeah, no, for sure. I was even thinking, when you look at like the UFC market, right? They just bought Strike Force for like $34 million. And then you look at how the fighters get paid, right? So what you don't see is, they say, so-and-so got a $5,000 bonus for best knockout of the night, or, best submission, and he made 40 G's or whatever fighting this fight. Okay, well, what they don't tell you is that dude had to have a boxing coach, he had to have a grappling coach, and he had to have a kickboxing coach, all of which he had to pay for.
Right.
Then they don't tell you that if he doesn't live in an area next to those people, or all those people don't live close enough to those people, he has to fly those people to a place.
Right.
And then put him there, and then pay to be there at that training facility, because people just aren't like, oh, you're so-and-so, we'll just train at my place for free. Right? And so out of all that money he makes, he doesn't necessarily keep that much in his pocket after he pays out all of his finances for even being able to compete in the fight. Whereas you have UFC, the organization, like we talked about, the name, it's making so much money, and, you know, the athletes can barely afford to live.
Right. I mean, and it was some information that I had read in regards to the UFC fighting is that, you know, your average fighter makes about maybe $5,000 a fight. But then you also have to think about, you know, injuries.
Right.
You know, if someone is injured, how many fights do they have to be out before they're able to fight again?
Right.
And I know they do have a union now, and you know, there's another organization, I believe it's called the MMA, which is kind of like, if I'm not mistaken, which is kind of like their rival, the UFC's rival, who have been having some serious talks about pension plans and healthcare. So now that's kind of pushing UFC to step their game up, man. Yes. I got a really good article to share because we had talked about the afterlife of professional sports.
Okay.
And one of the things that's prevalent is the injuries. And there's an article actually on CNN Health. It's titled "In UFC Fight, Mixed Martial Arts and Brain Science Collide." So without going in deep into the science, and I know I want y'all to take it to football as well, but what are some of the things that former NFL players and former UFC fighters can expect in terms of like brain injuries and injuries in general?
Well,
Muhammad Ali would be the perfect example, right? Of things to come as far as taking too many hits in the head.
Well, depression, definitely depression. You think about like a player like Junior Seau, one of the greater type of humans that played in the NFL, very kind individual, kills himself. You know, and he actually, I think on his note, he wrote he wanted his brain to be studied to see the effects of football on his brain that caused him to be in that depressive state, to take it to that degree. But yeah, you know, post-concussion syndrome is serious. You know, you get depressed, psychosis, those types of things. You know, memory loss, you know, stuff like that. Yeah.
And what's the fine for like helmet-to-helmet contact?
Because they changed. That's a new law now.
Yeah, it's new
in the NFL.
I don't know how I really feel about that. You know, I don't know if I could have played with all the rules and regulations that they have nowadays, because it's like,
how do you hit someone?
Right. You know, you're supposed to hit with your shoulder, but certain players like quarterbacks, you can't hit low. You can't hit too low. You can't hit too high.
Right.
You can't put them too aggressively to the ground. So people, I think you're going to see more injuries occur because people are thinking instead of reacting. You know what I mean?
And also, let's go back to those billions of dollars that these team owners have, where they could actually put some people to work to create some more, you know, helmets or things of that nature that would protect the players. Of course, there's like not necessarily ifs, ands, or buts, but you know, some people say, well, it's not necessarily the initial head contact, it's just being hit in general within that area. It's a soft spot.
Well, when you think about it, your brain's floating in water, right? So it's not the initial hit, but it's the hit of your brain hitting the side
bouncing
of your skull.
off your skull.
And then it causes a swelling, and that's where the issue comes in. So, yeah.
Wow. So what about martial arts? I mean, in terms of the mixed martial arts fighting, what would you say many of those fighters can expect, you know, later on down the line?
I would say, you know, not to mention the already plaguing injuries that you would have generally, right? Shoulder pains, knee pain, being more extensive than your average person, right? Because you're getting kicked in the leg, right? Taking those hits. But, you know, kind of like we talked about, you get hit in the head a lot. These guys are getting pounded on the floor. And like you said, it's not so much the initial I pound your face, right? But it's I pound your face, your brain bounces off the back of your skull, which then hits the floor, and then bounces back up, and then I pound your head again.
Right.
And then we repeat that process until the ref decides that you've had enough pounding in the head.
Right.
And how many ounces are we talking about with the average glove that they're wearing?
Oh, yeah, the gloves, what are the...
Very light. I think actually, though, when you think about, say, UFC versus boxing, the lighter glove is actually better. You know?
For sure.
Because once you get hit, if you get hit right, you're going to go to sleep.
Right.
Whereas in boxing, it takes a lot more skill to knock somebody out. So you're going to have to hit them a lot of times.
Right.
And it's more of a constant barrage of punches over the long term. That's why you see, you know, obviously UFC is pretty new, but you haven't really seen the slurred speech that you see from a lot of, you know, old-time boxers.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that's something that they actually bring up to the defense is that, you know, in the UFC, you're not going to see the dude take multiple punches like in boxing. And I can't remember the boxer's name, but he almost died in the ring taking multiple punches. And he
there's
lost
a lot of deaths.
70% of his eye vision, and he's paralyzed.
Yeah.
Yeah, all because he was trying to, you know, get in there and do his thing in the boxing ring. So that's one thing that you may not potentially see as high in the UFC world that you would see in the boxing world. Because like you said, you know, you 1-2 and the dude's out versus in boxing it's like 1-2, 1-2-3, 4, and then boom, okay, now I knocked him out.
Right.
So, you know, there's a lot of less potential for head injuries.
Right, and you know, of course, it's still, as it continues to unfold, it's going to be interesting to see how their health care is going to work over the course of their life. I mean, if they had a really short life in the sport and they didn't wind up being a really big name in the sport, will the sport say, well, sure, we'll give you health care the rest of your life, even though you really didn't rank, you ranked like 99. I mean, you know, it's going to be interesting to see as time goes on how this works out.
And I mean, and to a certain degree, I kind of get it as far as being on the other side and you're owning and you're like, okay, well, how much money did you make me versus how much money am I going to have to pay for you to be at the end of your thing? And so, you know, like we said, chasing that money, that financial dream is like chasing that mystery god. So in that same breath, you can't wait for someone else to do something for you or expect someone to do something for you. So like in football, they only get paid for 6 months of the year. The other 6 months you got to do for yourself. Well, there you go. You got to do for yourself. So you got to, you know, dude, take that big money that you made, that purse that you just made from that fight, and put some of that aside into, maybe it's not so cool as owning a club or having your own restaurant, but put it into a 401k plan or some mutual funds or something. I mean, something that's for sure going to make you some money so that when you're not fighting and you need to pay for your doctor bills or whatever, you can say, well, all right, let me just dip into this fund.
Right. And, you know, you're a celebrity. You're known, so use your celebrity to make money.
Right.
You know, you're only going to be in the spotlight for a short amount of time. So, you know, maximize what you do in that time.
Especially in the NFL.
Man.
Right. Well, it's been peace. Really great show. Why don't we leave you guys with something to do? Build with any young athletes in finance and saving money. Tell them the view.
Yeah, view Mike Tyson's documentary and watch that ESPN film called Broke. Oh, Tyson's documentary is called Tyson.
Yeah, that's a great one. And we deal with Reed. There's a book that's called Unsportsmanlike Conduct, and it's by Walter Byers. It's a great book because Walter Byers was actually one of the executives who worked in the NCAA. And he himself was talking about some of the exploitative practices that you know went down. So
so you see it from the inside out.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. So
Unbelievable. And on that note, you know, like I said, I had heard of a said college-based or football coach who was making like $1 million a year. You know, it almost floored me.
Oh
man.
yeah, they make money, man.
$1 million a year as a college football coach, man.
Well, think about it this way: you got like 100 and something teams, right? Who make money for the university, and these players aren't paid. You know, only a select few get scholarships.
Right.
But other than that, they're not paid. So,
And you can't talk about the things that you do give them, right? So you're like, hey, star quarterback, don't tell anyone, but here's the keys to that Porsche that you were looking at the dealership.
Right, that's a select few players, but the majority aren't getting anything. You know what I mean? Right. So that being said, you're making millions and millions of dollars for the university. You know, they have money to give out
to the coach like that.
Like wow, that.
Makes sense.
Man. Well, we would like to thank all of you for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Peace.
Peace.
Peace.